We have a great guest that is supposed to come on right away with us. And I'm so excited to talk about Seed, which is the newest dispensary to open in Boston, Massachusetts. You know, we're watched all over the world, David, but in Boston, this is only the third adult use dispensary to open since ballot box 2016. Yikes, huh? That's only 5 years ago. They've opened three adult use dispensaries. How crazy is that? Did I lose? Did I lose? I see April.
Hi.
Hi, April. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
We have to stop meeting like this. It's
I know.
twice in 1 week, and I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And I think David is still with us. David, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay. I just wasn't sure because I kind of was trying to interact with you. This is April Arrasate. Did I do it right?
Nice job. That was beautiful.
I've been practicing all week. You are the CEO of Seed, which is Boston's newest dispensary. And I was just kind of telling David, it's amazing to me. The voters voted in 2016, and it took 2 years to just open up a dispensary for adult use in Massachusetts. And now you are the third dispensary to open up in the biggest city in the state, the capital, Boston, Massachusetts. So first of all, congratulations, April.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a long road, but it's totally worth it, and we're so excited now that we're here.
And even though we don't like to date these things, but I'm going to do it anyway, your grand opening is Saturday, March 13th, which happens to be tomorrow because we are live streaming this on Friday the 12th. So
Yes.
we wish you good luck with that. But I got to tell you, I've been gushing about your dispensary since our little tour that I took on Wednesday this week. First of all, tell us a little bit about how long it took you to open your doors and how long a struggle really has it been for you and your other supporters and owners and staff there, and many of them are female.
Yeah, so we've been at this, like I said, for 2 years. It's a slow process, particularly in the city of Boston. Everybody was getting their legs under them with the recreational program. It's important to site correctly. We did a large build out. We also aren't just a cannabis dispensary. One of the main goals to this dispensary was to co-locate with CORE, which is a social justice cannabis museum. So we are a dispensary, Seed, but we also house CORE, and CORE has an exhibition gallery that's really meant to educate people about the drug war, incarceration in America, the disproportionate impacts that the drug war has had on low-income communities and minority communities, and also just how we got here. The current exhibition is called American Warden, and it's really meant to make people think about incarceration in America. I could go on and on about it, and I won't, but just like one thing that people I think need to know in general is like America, has 5% of the world's population, but we house 25% of the prisoner population. And that's just a really disturbing thing for a first world country. But so I'd love for people to come and experience the museum. It's different, it's new. We're focused on a retail experience that is intelligent, and also gives you all of your brands that in one spot. Because we are retail only, we carry everyone. And we're excited for everybody to be able to have a convenient place to get everything they need. So yeah, the grand opening's tomorrow in JP, Hyde Square, 11 to 8. We're doing ribbon cuttings, and there'll be vendors here and all that good stuff. So thanks for shouting us
I
off.
wish it was going to be as warm tomorrow as it is today, but perhaps that'll. People in New England and Boston are pretty hardy. I expect you'll have a pretty big crowd there. One of the most impressive things about the tour and the dispensary was not just your passion about what you've accomplished there, April, but the fact that you guys have a jail cell in the middle of the dispensary. Can you explain how that all happened?
Yeah, art is meant to be visceral, right? How do you get people's attention? And I was trying to create something that we knew would put people in the place. I think we all know a lot of things. We're aware of a lot of things, but until you're in the place, you don't really, it doesn't stick with you. And that is the point. You know, I have a curating council of experts in social justice, Ivy League professors, best-selling authors. And one of the things, we held an inaugural event at the Museum of Fine Arts, and a curator there was kind enough to present to us about what creates a successful exhibit. And one of the things she said was, you have to create a moment of communion between your guests and the exhibit. And if at least one exhibit creates that moment of communion with someone, then maybe they walk away and they have a mindset that is different than the one they walked in with. And that's what we're trying to do, to create more reasonable drug policy, not just for cannabis, but for all drugs down the line. I mean, humans like substances, you know, that's it. You know, I love to say it's all medicine, but just humans love substances. It's who we are. And so we need to just accept that and create more reasonable policy around that. And so the jail cell was meant to create that visceral feeling that people might walk away with. We sourced the doors from Belmont Prison in Massachusetts. And inside the jail cell, maybe the most powerful part of it is Nyambi McIntosh, who is the youngest daughter of Peter Tosh, legendary reggae icon. And she's
wait, hang on a second. David, do you know who Peter Tosh is?
Yes, I do, Jimmy.
All right,
and who did he play? What was the reggae band that he played with?
Now you got me with an absolute
Bob Marley and the Wailers. He was an
That's right.
original. He was an original partner of Bob Marley and the Wailers. Okay, so go ahead, April. I just love doing that.
You know, he also is like responsible for basically the legalization ballad, which is legalize it. So I know you've heard that song before, David, even if you can't remember it now. So at any rate, she tells the story of her brother, Jawara Tosh, who's also known as Tosh One. He was a musician himself, and he basically lost his life to the drug war. It is so powerful, the generational impact that prohibition has had on this family. And she tells it so movingly. So for anyone that can come down and sort of sit in the jail cell and have that experience and learn about Jawara's story, I think I just hope they walk away with something that stays with them.
Well, the first time I heard that story, it was incredibly moving for me. And I remember when I first heard it, which was at the first ever Boston Cannabis Week. And it was about 10 days before the CanX Jamaican convention. And I walked up to her and I said, look, I'm going to be in Jamaica. Can we do a one-on-one interview? And it was such a powerful interview. And she and I are the only two people who actually heard it, because we had an SD card issue and it got corrupted. I laugh now, but I was really embarrassed. And I hope Nyambi will forgive me at some point and we'll get a chance to sit down again and have a chat, because her story and the story of her brother is so powerful. And I'm just going to tease it, because if you really want to hear it, go to Seed and listen to the story in the jail cell. It's really cool and very moving. April, walk us through how challenging it was for you to put together an investment team, and you have mostly minorities, you have mostly women on your staff. Talk to me a little bit, tell us a little bit more about how important it was for you to have that kind of backing in order to get to the starting line.
Yeah, so, the mission here, I wanted to be sure the mission was not just outward, but also went inward. So we wanted to create a company DNA that was aligned with our mission. So organically and naturally, myself and my partners, Tomas Gonzalez and Perry Higgins, who happen to be a Latino man and an African-American woman, were working together. So that was not something that I had to go seek out. It just was who we were. But I wanted to make sure in raising capital that we were doing a couple of things, that we were providing this opportunity for people who wouldn't normally have the opportunity to invest in something like this, and also representing women and people of color and local people who were within walking distance of the dispensary. So we are currently 72% women owned, 81% of our investors are people of color, 82% are local, and collectively we have spent more than 10 years incarcerated by the drug war. And those numbers I'm very proud of those numbers. I think we have power as consumers. It's probably the most power we have in today's society is what we choose to buy and where. And I hope that, you know, our guests will use that power to find companies like ours that disrupt the status quo. And maybe cannabis is such a new industry, we have the opportunity to create new success. And I think cannabis deserves that, rather than just the same people who always had everything continuing to have everything that they once vilified.
David, I bet you have a question for April. Am I right? I think I set you up okay.
Okay, you set me up. Okay, thanks, Jimmy. How did you walk us through, because we have a lot of people who watch the show who are in the social equity program. Walk us through, how did you go about identifying people to raise money from? How did you get the word out?
So Tomas Gonzalez is part of, and by the way, we are not social equity or empowerment. We are a DBE, a disadvantaged business enterprise, a women-owned.
Wait, can you explain the distinction?
Yeah, so economic empowerment refers to a group of people that were deemed empowerment applicants. I believe there's 123 of them. They were deemed that in a 2-week process that took place years ago. Since then, which was crazy, right? Because then what if you didn't know about it? Since then, the state has created a social equity program, basically allowing people who fall in those same characteristics having to do with your address, your socioeconomic status, and your ethnic background, whether or not you qualify for that. But so they've opened up social equity, which basically is the same as economic empowerment, except rather than having been certified in that 2-week period, they are on a rolling basis. And what that does is it allows the applicant priority status. And that means that they go to the top of the pile when they're being reviewed by the state. So we do not qualify for that, but we wanted to make sure we were in the spirit of that. And my partner, Tomas Gonzalez, is from Jamaica Plain, is from where our dispensary is. So again, a lot of our investors are people that we know, that were already in our orbit, people that have businesses in this area, people that grew up in this area. And so it wasn't necessarily we weren't targeting based on these criteria. It's again, just sort of organically who we were, and we're proud of it.
You live your brand, April.
Thank you. It's, they're sort of one and the same.
That's the idea. And in fact, if I remember when one of the walls that explains the investor makeup and the management makeup, the last thing on there, I believe, was 10% had been incarcerated. Do I remember that right?
Over 10 years incarcerated.
Over 10 years. Sorry.
And greater than 10 years incarcerated.
I remembered the 10.
Yeah, good job. Yeah, so I mean, we're just trying to make sure that that doesn't become an obstacle for people, because now exactly the same things that people were put behind bars for, people are making millions of dollars on, and still people are behind bars. It's not a thing of the past. We have a tendency to say that happened, but that's happening still.
Oh, it absolutely is. In fact, one of the stats that really bothered me was the fact that in New Jersey, even though voters voted it in legal at the ballot box in November, there were still 5,000 arrests for cannabis possession in that state between Election Day and the day that the governor signed the legalization bill. And it just boggles my mind when I think about that. And obviously, a lot of those people were persons who have been most victimized by the war on drugs. And it's got to stop. I mean, I'm very outspoken about this, and it's one of the reasons why I started this company, was to give people the opportunity to tell their stories about the injustices that they've had to face in their enjoyment of a plant. Okay, it's a plant medicine, but it's still a plant. And now, of course, we're slowly but surely, I believe, inch by inch, breaking down that stigma. You still face that, I'm sure, April, when you tell people in your family or your supporter, maybe not your supporters because they support you, but people, friends, you're in the cannabis business, really? Still, right?
it's funny. I mean, most of the people in my world, I've been in this industry since 2012. So most of the people in my world, you know, I almost forget those people exist sometimes because they're not around. I'm like, what do you mean? Everybody loves cannabis, you know? But it does still exist. But I also think like on a larger level, you know, cannabis is what we can use to sort of create this conversation and understand this. But on a bigger level, if it's not cannabis, it's something else that's being manipulated to sort of harm us as citizens. And I feel like we have choices and we have the right to sort of create our own world. And so we just have to be really careful of who we allow to have power and what sort of policies we allow, and just in everything. I mean, you know, I have a background in biotech. I'm an attorney. I have all these industries. I've seen such horrific injustice that has to do, if I'm honest, with economics. And so
Right.
just we're powerful as a people. We just have to, you know, come together.
And
It sounds so cheesy, but that's the reality.
no, no, it's not cheesy at all. And it's so amazing to me that even during the pandemic, where we've had to socially distance, the actual culture of sharing the fragrance, the enjoyment of passing a joint in a group of people that perhaps you didn't know, but you bonded over passing the joint around to these people. It's always had a socialization aspect, but now, of course, we've had to distance ourselves. And yet here we are, perhaps seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of the pandemic, where we do hope that by the end of this year, we'll actually be able to go back to socialization again, and the role that the cannabis plant can play in that, bringing us all together again, right? I mean, isn't that what we're waiting for?
Yeah, I mean, you and I experienced it the other day. You were leaving. I'm like, can we hug? I don't know. It's just tough. I mean, I'm tired of this.
I will say this, I shook more hands face to face and skin to skin in your dispensary than I have in a year.
You know, people can't, it's hard. That's why we have dispensers, you know, Purell dispensers everywhere. We have a very large space here. We have stickers on the floor. But I think, I mean, lest we digress, but in the warmer weather, it seems like people are, I don't know.
We have to get out. We have to live. The human beings crave socializations. We're social people. So again, you know, we're all getting a little stir crazy. And needless to say, you know, I don't want to put the kibosh on winter, okay? Because I remember the April 1st snowstorm. David, I bet you do too. Back in, I think it was 97, maybe 96, 26 inches of snow, April Fool's Day. Not.
Wow.
I'm sorry. I had to digress. But this way, I want to make sure we won't have a snowstorm on April 1st. What do you hope to accomplish with your dispensary and your social justice museum? Is it an educational thing that drives you more than anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I like revealing injustice. You know, when I started Curaleaf in the Connecticut Curaleaf in 2013, I guess that was, I was fueled by this fire of injustice that I felt when I lost my mom to breast cancer. And I had witnessed, you know, the sort of US cancer machine, and that I felt like it was very money driven. I felt like dying in this country was barbaric. And that sort of injustice sort of fueled me to allow people a more graceful way to die. And it was a medical program in Connecticut. And I wanted to see the justice of that. It seems so unreasonable that you could have something so gentle as a plant to really assist you as you were leaving this plane of existence, or we could dose you to death with opioids and a myriad other drugs that are just sold by different people, and that's the only distinction. And so that sort of injustice that I see and that we all see in the legalization of cannabis and the prohibition of cannabis and incarceration, those things fuel me, you know, and I think fuel a lot of us who maybe in a prior war, if it was the 60s, I would have been like at the front line, you know, with the sign, not the war front line, the other front line.
I understand. I was a protester. I was there. I was 13 years old, but I was there. And I'm David, were you protesting the war back then?
Too young to be.
You were too young. Yeah. Well, I'm old. What can I tell you? I'm comfortable with that.
I'm
April,
old. Jimmy. I'm old. You're really old.
before we let you go, April, I do want to talk a little bit about the wall of musicians that you have there and the ability to actually put in a song that has something to do with cannabis. Can you explain how that all came about before we take our 420 break? And then you'll know where I'm going because we talked about this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there's this System of a Down song, prison song, and I run to it, and it just is really, basically saying, they're trying to build a prison for you and me. And I wanted to put all of our favorite musicians on the wall who had been arrested for cannabis possession. So we have mugshots from all these various musicians, and the display talks a lot about the vilification of jazz and what Louis Armstrong faced and his contemporaries back in the day in the American sort of drug policy propaganda machine. And so as part of that exhibit, we asked guests to interact with our Spotify playlist that has, employees, all of us, everyone has selected songs that are meaningful to them that have to do with cannabis. And you can scan the QR code and download the playlist through Spotify, or you can suggest songs to us and we'll add them to the playlist. And that's, music and cannabis are so linked.
Exactly. And I talked to you about Shanty, written by Jonathan Edwards.
It's on.
Of course it is. I told you I signed up for the email and I did it and I'm excited. And again, the people who watch the Green Rush on a regular basis, David will tell you this too. I enlighten people about why and how 420 started with a group of high school kids at San Rafael, California. They were called the Waldos, and they would meet after school in 1971 at the Louis Pasteur statue, and they would catch a buzz until law enforcement, being those public safety guardians that they are, figured it out, and they adopted the 420 code as public consumption of cannabis going on at the corner of Main and Vine or whatever street you happen to be at. Then, of course, the cannabis culture caught on to it. They celebrate April 20th. And in 1971, it happens to coincide with the first time that I tasted cannabis as an 8th grader just outside of Boston. And I've adopted the song Shanty by Jonathan Edwards because that is whenever we heard it on the radio, and it used to be on WCAS AM 740, it was an alternative rock station. David, do you remember that by any chance?
I do, Jimmy. And even if I didn't, we talk about it every week. So it's burned into my mind.
Well, at least you're paying attention. April Arrasate, Seed opens on Saturday. Enjoy.
Ready.
Best of luck in the future. We're going to take a time out now. Listen to Shanty by Jonathan Edwards. And when we come back, we're going to celebrate more women in cannabis. Don't go away.
Money.